After having a pretty dominant meta from last patch, this new season brings in a lot of changes to the DPS tier list. 4 of the most one-sided escort maps have been changed, the dominating Brig and Juno have been nerfed, and Sombra and Sojourn have been adjusted even more. They don't get simple changes like bullet damage adjustments or ultimate cost reductions. Blizzard is trying out new things and even reverting reworks. So let's have a look at what the new DPS tier list for Season 13 looks like. If you're looking to rank up on your favorite heroes, check out the link in the description below to get access to a GameLeap membership. There are tons of guides and courses that can level up your game and help you get better, faster. Make sure to check it out and enjoy the video. Starting with D tier, where we've got Bastion. He would probably be F tier if not for how genuinely strong his turret form is. No matter what, he's always got 6 seconds where he's hard to kill and kills hard, but it's definitely a gatekeeping playstyle. It's pretty easy to bait the form or even just sustain it with how strong frontline tanks are right now. It's tough to secure kills on tanks, and Bastion isn't the best hero for getting picks from far away. He still works great as a counter to heavy sustain comps that heal and block a lot, but he usually has way too much downtime where he can be rushed or just ignored while his team dies. Moving up to C tier is Sombra. This patch really nerfed her hard. That clearly wasn't the intention, but now that her invisibility is completely tied to her translocator, she now takes way longer to set up. It was so bad that they even hotfixed her translocator cooldown, which is now down to 6 seconds. But the damage has still been done. Even if she can escape easier now that her stealth doesn't get cancelled, it's really not that worth it because it slows her down so much. She was already lethal enough, so while going for the hack and virus will be slightly more devastating than before thanks to the opportunist passive, you risk losing the front line since it'll take so long to get ready to go. If it was just a stealth change and the opportunist passive added back, she might have been okay, but she also got another ultimate cost increase on her EMP, slowing her tempo down even harder. And to add even more insult to injury, her hack silence duration is now down to 1 second, so even if you'll kill faster with the 20% bonus damage against hacked targets, they can defend themselves faster too. You'll only have a second to kill them, most of which is taken up by the recovery from the hack animation and the virus casting. She can still blast heroes fast, but it's a weird change that makes her more clunky and puts her very low in the tier list. Next we have Soldier 76. Armor may have been decreased to only reducing 7 damage, but it still massively affects Soldier's damage output, and Tactical Visor doesn't do much compared to other hitscan ultimates that can either zone better or straight up give your team an instant advantage. Frontline damage is important, as well as the ability to punish stacked teams with how good Juno and Brig still are, and Soldier just doesn't cut it, despite having decent damage against squishies while on the flank. Going up to B tier, first up is Torbjorn. His spam is good, but right now it's pretty hard to keep your turret up. He works as a counter pick, but the best DPS are the ones that need to be countered through their sheer power, not reactive swaps after you see the enemy team comp. At least his ultimate will stop a rush in its tracks, even though his neutral is noticeably weaker than other projectile spammers, like the next hero, Junkrat. Since he got his grenade damage buffed to 125, he's been pretty good. He's not really the meme hero anymore, even if he can get counterpicked hard by flyers. Breaking armor constantly is clutch. It just about makes up for how random the trap is and for how inconsistent Riptire is. At least his concussion mines can still set up picks. It's not guaranteed to bounce your enemies in the right direction, but it's often a great setup if you can land it at the right time. Next up we have Reaper in the middle of B tier. He's decent right now. He'll pretty much always be limited by his shotgun range and big hitbox unless he has a super high lifesteal, but he doesn't need to be that much stronger than he is right now, since he has Shadow Step to quickly set up on flanks or just teleport on backline immediately. He's actually similar to Bastion. With his abilities ready, he's extremely strong, and after, he has to recover. It's just much more valuable to have a bulky, high burst DPS fighting enemies from the back rather than the front. Starting off the top 3 of B tier is Venture. The last nerf they got was to the shield generating passive. Even though their engage can be really hard to defend against, you'll need to constantly set up pushes to make up for the weaker than normal neutral damage. The actual engage is strong though. Burrowing in puts pressure on the enemy team to fall back or get AoE blasted. They're easier to counter now, but although they lack range, one-shotting with your drill combo is still possible, especially now that a lot more heroes have been lowered to 225 HP. Next we have Hanzo. This patch, he got buffed back to 250 HP, which is definitely the right idea. Now that we've tested the smaller sized arrows that can one-shot, it's pretty clear that he just has to constantly get picks to make up for that reliable arrow spam he lost. Either way, he deals the same amount of damage to tanks, so he's better than previously for sure. He has less consistency with his primary fire, but his storm arrows and sonic still have constant impact. Best in B tier is Widowmaker. She's obviously very situational, but even so, she can be incredibly strong in a lot of situations. Now that Sombra struggles to set up, dealing with Widow is mostly up to dive tanks, so she can be a lot more threatening when that's harder to pull off. But this patch, 3 of her best maps have been pretty radically changed, and not in a good way for Widow. More cover and more rotations make it easier to avoid her line of sight, and once you can avoid getting picked instantly, Widow can very quickly fall off an impact. It'll still take a lot of coordination to beat a good Widow, but you don't just have to focus her to win. Once you know which sightlines she has, you can also take the 5v4 against her team where she won't be able to help as much. Now for A tier, starting off with Symmetra. She still has 275 HP, a 300 HP teleporter, and decent damage on both of her fire types. So basically, she's hard to kill, forces enemies to focus a structure if they don't want her to insta-swap her in her team's position constantly, and deals decent damage at both close and long range. She's come a long way from being easily countered. She's only limited by her range, so her spot at the bottom of A tier is really just because her damage is inconsistent. Her utility is amazing, even though her turrets are a bit gimmicky. Moving on, we have Tracer. She was top tier with 6 damage per bullet, but now she's only strong. It's not a good meta for her either, so still being A tier is just a testament to how consistent her kit is. Her mobility is ideal for contesting objectives and harassing backlines, and her damage is still enough to wear down any enemy, even tanks with all their armor. So she's always going to be good even into any matchup. But slightly better is Genji. He always has a spot reserved when the meta gets brawly, dashing through multiple targets, deflecting to punish focus fire, and even constant projectile spam. He's also one of the best heroes to get maximum value out of commanding shout, projected bubble, or even just pocket heals from across the map. A lot of teamwork based abilities. So although he is dependent on strong teamwork to really shine, it's not hard to coordinate at all. Right in the middle of A tier, it's starting to get broken. We've got Farah, who's one of the best alternate picks in the meta. Spamming rockets from the back and then dashing forward for a barrage is all you need to farm games. Everything else is a bonus. Her rockets do it all: break armor, burst enemies to half health, and splash damage grouped teams. It was a bit worrying when she was the only hero with 225 HP, but now that a lot of other heroes have joined her, she's even more dangerous. And because she can just throw rockets from so far away, avoiding hitscan fall-off range mostly depends on the map. And with the map updates that just came in, there are even new flanks you can take to really play it safe. Next, we have one of the best upgrades recently. Sojourn takes the number 3 spot in A tier thanks to the new buffs. It took a while to recover from the railgun nerf that took her max damage from 130 down to 100. But she's much closer now to that power level, although she plays noticeably different. It wasn't a direct buff she just got though. Her energy now goes down all the way to 0 instead of 25, but you have more time before it starts decreasing. 5 more seconds, from 7 to 12 total. That's long enough that you pretty much won't ever lose your energy by being too passive. It's very easy to deal a single point of damage every 12 seconds compared to 7 where players can hide for a bit to cool down. Her disruptor shot also got a major upgrade, now dealing 20 more DPS for a total of 80 and also contributing 25% of that damage to energy, which will give you 20 energy per second per player that's in the area, which is decent and can give you that extra boost to get a quick kill. And it's definitely an even bigger help in the 1v1 now that the damage is 10 more than Winston's even. With the disruptor shot and headshots now giving bonus energy, Sojourn is constantly getting railgun shots. So while the playstyle is very new, it's in a good way, and you can do a lot especially with your mobility, even though other heroes have more direct impact. Second in A tier goes to Ekko. Even with 25 less HP, she still has some of the highest impacting abilities in the game. She has good range, great mobility, great spam, and great burst. She can really do everything as a DPS, although she's squishier than she used to be. As soon as you start farming those ultimates though that do charge faster than ever before, you can play even more aggressively without worrying about that 25 less max health. Ekko still fits in well, and Duplicate is pretty much always amazing in big brawly mirrors. You farm ultimates fast, so you can usually get away with 2 if the first one isn't enough to finish the teamfight. And finally, for the best A tier spot, it's Cassidy. His close range and 2-tap potential is ideal when everyone's in close range, and his hindering grenade is a pretty useful utility that even hard counters certain heroes, like Venture for example. He's not the guaranteed must pick anymore, but he's very strong, so all you need to do is play for your ideal range, 20 meters, and rotate to keep enemies in that range to avoid getting sniped from further away. Cass can be run down. Hit scans have really been victims to the Juno rush, but he has the extra health and the damage reduction on his roll to soak some of that pressure. So it ends up being a skill issue with positioning and how many headshots you can keep pumping out. And now for S tier, with the heroes that are the most versatile and consistent. Mei is one of the only heroes who's gone from barely played to being constantly useful with really just one change: her icicle damage buff in exchange for a smaller projectile. It allows her to 3-shot with body shots, which is pretty strong, and that means you can get double tapped with a headshot and another hit. Suddenly, Mei's pretty good at dueling anybody, on top of having great utility to defend against all tanks. Ice Wall may be easier to break, but it still has that immediate blocking impact. No line of sight, no healing, and even no info. Slows are so important, and Mei has it constantly available. There are less tanks that can block it than those that are vulnerable to it, so you'll always have an advantage. Being able to pierce with your freeze is also really useful, and that same area of effect damage is what helps keep the best DPS at the top. It's Ashe, although it does need to be said that she's not exactly dominating. Hit scans can really be hunted and shut down, but they still have the most consistent impact that needs to be countered to be dealt with. Ashe has the constant damage despite nerfs to her reload speed and hipfire damage. She also has a great fast charging ultimate. Bob has been devastating since he got the tank passive buff, and Dynamite and Coach Gun fill her requirements for punishing stacked players as well as saving herself when she does get pressured. Sometimes all you need is to live that one engage and the fight is over thanks to your constant stream of damage. And that's it for the DPS tier list of Season 13. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.